Robert Sterling had built his fortune through decades of careful decisions and calculated risks. At 62, he owned 3 successful companies and lived in a grand estate that spoke of his achievements. Yet success, he had learned, could not shield him from life's deepest sorrows. His wife Margaret had passed away 6 months earlier, leaving him with twin babies, Emma and James, born just weeks before she lost her battle with cancer. The house that once echoed with laughter now felt hollow, filled only with the soft cries of infants who would never know their mother's gentle touch. When Robert hired Sophia Washington as the children's caregiver, he had conducted the interview with his usual businesslike efficiency. Sophia was 45, a widow herself, with grown children who had moved away. Her references were impeccable, her experience extensive. What he hadn't expected was the way she would breathe life back into his home. Sophia arrived each morning at 6, staying until the babies were settled for the night. She had a way of humming old lullabies while she worked, melodies that seemed to calm not just the twins, but somehow soothed the grief that clung to the house like morning fog. On this particular evening, Robert had returned late from a business dinner. The house was quiet as he climbed the mahogany staircase, his footsteps muffled by the thick Persian runner. He intended to check on Emma and James before retiring, as he did every night since Margaret's passing. But as he approached the nursery, he paused. The door was slightly ajar, and through the gap, he could see something that stopped him in his tracks. There, on the soft carpet beside the babies' cribs, lay Sophia. She was still wearing her white uniform, but she had removed her shoes and was resting on her side. Between her protective arms lay both twins, Emma and James, sleeping peacefully. The 3 of them were bathed in the gentle glow of the night light, creating a scene of such tender intimacy that Robert felt his breath catch in his throat. For a moment he simply stood there, processing what he was seeing. His business mind, trained to analyze and categorize, struggled with the emotions rising within him. This wasn't what he had hired Sophia to do. The babies had their own rooms, their own cribs, their own carefully planned sleeping arrangements. But as he watched, longer, something shifted in his understanding. He could see the rise and fall of Sophia's breathing, matching the rhythm of the sleeping children. Her arm was draped protectively over both babies, and even in sleep, her body was curved around them like a shield. Robert's throat tightened as he realized what he was witnessing. This wasn't negligence or overstepping boundaries. This was love, in its purest form. This was what his children had been missing since Margaret died, the simple, profound comfort of being held while they slept. He remembered his own childhood, how his mother would sometimes let him fall asleep in her bed during thunderstorms, how safe and protected he had felt wrapped in her arms. His children, barely 6 months old, had never known that security. Until now, quietly, Robert stepped back from the doorway. His initial impulse had been to wake Sophia, to remind her of professional boundaries. But wisdom, earned through his own losses, whispered a different message. Sometimes the most important rules were the ones written not in contracts, but in the heart. The next morning, Robert found Sophia in the kitchen, preparing the baby's morning bottles. She looked up with a slight flush of embarrassment when she saw him. "Mr. Sterling," she began, "I want to apologize for last night. Emma was having trouble settling, and when I picked her up, James started crying too. I thought if I just laid down with them for a few minutes." Her voice trailed off. Robert poured himself a cup of coffee, taking his time with his response. "Sophia," he said finally, his voice gentler than she had ever heard it. "In all my years of business, I've learned that the most valuable things can't be measured in contracts or job descriptions." He sat down across from her, his eyes meeting, hers with unexpected warmth. "My children lost their mother, but somehow they found exactly what they needed. Sophia's eyes filled with tears she quickly tried to hide. "They're beautiful children, Mr. Sterling, and they're so much like her. I can see Mrs. Margaret in their faces." "Yes," Robert said softly, "they are. And they deserve to grow up knowing they're loved, not just cared for." From that day forward, the house began to change. Robert found himself coming home earlier, not just to see his children, but to witness the small miracles of daily care that Sophia provided. He watched her read to the twins, her voice animated and musical. He saw how they reached for her with the trust that only comes from feeling completely safe. As weeks passed, Robert realized that Sophia had become more than an employee. She had become the heart of their small family, the one who made their house feel like a home again. The way she sang while folding tiny clothes, the gentle way she spoke to the babies even when they couldn't understand, the tender moments he occasionally glimpsed when she thought no one was watching. All of it reminded him that love comes in many forms. One evening, as autumn painted the trees outside their window, Robert made a decision that would have surprised his younger, more rigid self. He knocked on the nursery door and found Sophia reading a bedtime story to the twins, who were nestled against her on the rocking chair. "Sophia," he said, "would you consider making this arrangement permanent? Not just as their caregiver, but as part of our family?" Her eyes widened with surprise and something that looked like hope. "I've been thinking," Robert continued, "about what children really need to thrive. And I believe Emma and James need exactly what you've been giving them. A love that doesn't watch the clock or worry about job descriptions." That night, as he had done every night since discovering them together, Robert paused at the nursery door. There was Sophia again, sleeping peacefully on the floor with the twins safe in her arms. But this time, instead of uncertainty, he felt only gratitude. Sometimes, he reflected, the greatest gifts come in forms we never expect. His children had lost their mother, but in their loss, they had found something precious, a love that transcended race, class, and convention. A love that chose comfort over formality and heart over hierarchy. As he watched them sleep, Robert smiled. Margaret would have understood. She would have seen what he now saw so clearly. That family isn't always defined by blood, but by the willingness to love without conditions. In the soft glow of the night light, three hearts beat in gentle rhythm, and a house that had known too much sorrow was filled once again with the quiet miracle of love.